Hey guys, welcome back to Sailing Garuda. You know, we get a lot of questions about how we live here on the boat.
Yeah, and we've finished a lot of our major boat projects and we've made it to the Bahamas, so we thought it would be a great time to show you around the boat and give you a tour.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do is kind of break this into two pieces. One would be the exterior, and then tomorrow we'll film something on the interior. We'll still release them at the same time, but that way we're not rushed and you got plenty of time to add your comments or ask us any questions.
I'm Herb, and this is Heather. We're post-career empty nesters who found the next phase of our lives lacking. Inspired by other YouTubers, we bought a small fixer-upper sailboat and spent 2 years building her into our traveling home. Now we're about to find out if it was all worthwhile. Subscribe and come along on our next adventure as we set sails to rediscover what's really necessary to live a meaningful life.
The wind into myself, away from things I let go, floating on the waves. We go bottoms up, we go all the way. When you're feeling down, push the pain away. We go bottoms.
So Garuda is a 1980 Pearson 365 catch. It is hull number 339, and Pearson actually has a really interesting story.
The Pearson cousins, Clinton and Everett, literally started in their garage, building one of the first fiberglass dinghies and runabouts. Their design proved popular, and soon they relocated to an empty textile mill in Bristol, Rhode Island. They were approached by Tom Holland and Carl Ahlberg, who had designed a 28-foot family cruiser sailboat they hoped to make out of fiberglass and sell for under $10,000. The boat was called the Triton, and it turned out to be a big risk. They even had to borrow money in order to truck it to the 1959 New York Boat Show. It wasn't actually finished, and as the story goes, they didn't even have the money to pay the hotel bill. But the show and the design proved to be a success. With 17 orders, they presumably paid the hotel bill, returned to Rhode Island, and went to work, and thus began the modern era of fiberglass production sailboats. Grumman Allied Industries bought a controlling interest in Pearson Yachts in 1961, and a few years later, Bill Shaw was hired as Pearson's chief designer. The 365 was Shaw's personal idea of what a boat should be. A 36-footer with a 4.5-foot shoal draft keel, 570 square feet of sail on a masthead rig, 7,300 pounds of lead in her keel and a skeg-hung rudder. Built for blue water, but comfortable as a coastal cruiser. The 70s fuel crisis, 80s tax law changes, and the recession in the 90s had a dramatic impact on the U.S. boat industry, and, like many others, Pearson Yachts didn't survive, closing its doors in 1991. But between 1976 and 1982, Pearson built 405 of the 365, and we believe most of them are still around today.
We are starting up here on the bow, and more specifically the bow roller. So the bow roller on this Pearson was replaced before we got to it. It's actually one of the known issues on the Pearson 365, and our bow roller has been replaced with a stainless steel cover as well as a stainless steel stanchion underneath that attaches to the front of the bow. Sitting on the bow roller, we have two anchors, a Rachna and a CQR. I covered both back in an anchor episode when we replaced all the chain and all of the rode in order to, before we did repairs to the anchor locker, but that's down below. From here, what we've done on the deck is we've attached a brand new windlass. And the windlass actually is controlled back at the helm and up front with a foot pedal on the deck as well as a remote control. And this is pretty much Heather station, so dropping and retrieving the anchor all happens from up here. We've also replumbed what was originally the saltwater intake that used to plumb the toilet. Now is a saltwater wash down on a pump out here to this hose, and helps us clean a little bit off the deck, but it's pretty much specifically here to clean off the anchor before it sits back on the bow roller. So also found on the bow roller, or certainly off the bow of the boat, is our Genoa. We believe that the Genoa, it's on a roller furler which is controlled back in the cockpit, and we believe that our Genoa is 130, 135%, something like that. Don't exactly know for certain. If you've seen any of the past episodes like our crossing, you know we've had to make a few repairs to this already. Probably have to replace this down the road, but at the moment the Genoa is pretty much our main sail. The exception would be really light wind or downwind sails, in which case we have a spinnaker, we just haven't flown it yet. But it would sit here in a turtle bag up front, and then we use the whisker pole off of the mast in order to fly it, at least theoretically. So I don't know, stay tuned, maybe you'll see our spinnaker. All right, so moving aft from the bow is kind of our main deck area. This pretty much is our outdoor space. At least it's our outdoor activity space for anything that we're doing. Well, normally a beanbag actually sits up front here, but we have it off to the side because we are messing a little bit with solar power. So we have an additional flexible solar panel in addition to what I'll show you once we get back to the cockpit. And we use this one kind of flexible. So it not only charges our electric outboard for the dinghy, we can use it for any special purposes as well, if something in particular that we want to charge, or we can hook it up to the house battery like it is today. It allows me to study a little bit of solar power and do some comparisons. So we have it out today, just trying to catch a little bit of extra power. But in the meantime, or normally we would have a beanbag or anything else. This is just flexible space, so it kind of goes however we want to go. And speaking of activities, we keep scuba tanks on the rail, on the barge boards, which we added to the side. We have a rigid paddle board, and we have an inflatable paddle board that will come out. So we have our toys once we want to get things into place. We keep 5 gallons of gasoline on the rail. Gas powers our outboard, or kind of, well, our outboard for the dinghy, but also a portable generator, which we keep on the other rail. We also carry 10 gallons of additional diesel in jerry cans on the rail as well. That's primarily for emergencies, although we do kind of cycle those in order to get them into place. And probably lastly from up here, well, it's the main mast. So everything happens to sail pretty much here at the main mast. All of our controls come in, even though they're hidden behind this cloth at the moment. All of our controls come in down below. So whether we're flying the spinnaker, whether we're lifting the main, whether we're dealing with the whisker pole, everything pretty much happens here. This is another heather station. So I have sewn new sail bags. We actually put these in as cradles in order to catch the sails. So they unzip along the top and the sails go up, but they're held up by lazy jacks. So when we're dropping the sails, we can just flake the sail right into the bag and zip it back up again. So mostly to just add longevity to the sails. I mean, they do kind of look nice now that they're blue. They weren't a great color to start with, but they're here for UV protection in order to keep the sails kind of in place. Fanfare in the mid decks. Our country flag flies here off the starboard side. So when we're checked into a foreign country like we are today in the Bahamas, we fly that country's courtesy flag here that shows that we've been checked in. It also flies our Q flag. So if you saw our check-in video here in the Bahamas, that's where we replaced the country flag. On the other side, we fly our radar reflector as well as our crew flag. So we're the only crew on board right now, so we've got our home state of Florida up there flying, but anyone else who comes on board, we would fly their home state as well. So we got some pretty good ventilation up on deck as well. There's a front hatch that goes into the V-berth that lets a lot of air in. Our main hatch, that's right in the salon saloon, sits right here underneath the main boom. And we get pretty much good air from that as well. We have 2 Garudas, one vents on the bathroom side as well as into the salon. The other just catches some wind for the salon as well. I don't know, I think those are probably for looks. They don't seem to do a whole lot, but they are there in place. We tie our boat hooks and our paddle boards and some other stuff down on our handrails on the side. We do use the handrails, but when we're underway, we of course have kind of a safety jack line that runs the length of the boat, and that's what we clip onto more than anything else. So anyway, that kind of probably completes the mid portion of the boat. I'm sitting on the Turtle, which is pretty much the companionway or the hatchway that takes us downstairs. But before we get into the cockpit, you can clearly see the Dodger. The Dodger has a number of purposes. I guess we should say that not only does it look cool, that certainly was one of the ideas, but it keeps rain, wind, spray, all of the elements from going down in the companionway. So it's actually pretty handy for us. We can leave the Turtle open. We leave our companionway open pretty much the entire time. Even in our roughest sails, we've never really closed anything down yet. The Dodger gives us pretty good protection all the way around. We got isinglass in it, of course, so that we can see through. It's a little restricted just by design. But for the most part, we have great visibility from the cockpit, so everything else happens from back there. One of the major projects we had early on was redoing all the woodwork on Garuda, both the rub rails on the side as well as the cap rails. And it's been over a year now, so probably in need of a little bit more, to tell you the truth, but it still really kind of has that good vintage look of all of the wood here that's on that kind of surrounds Garuda. But we've done some touch-ups here or there. We had a couple holes we need to fill in with epoxy. We had a couple of spare pieces or broken pieces that we ended up having to kind of make on the outside. We also, with some help from some of our neighbors back in Tavernier, had a boat ladder that we put in on the side. The boat ladder is really, really handy for when you're swimming. We have one actually off the back as well, but this one seems a whole lot more convenient. We've replaced all the lifelines along the side. Keys Rigging did that for us back in Florida when we first got started. And we have gates on both the port and starboard side to allow us easy access when we're on finger piers or on the dock, or heck, if we just want to jump in the water. In fact, it's so convenient, we've kind of learned to keep our dinghy here on the side. It'll hang off the back, but we keep the dinghy on the side a lot of the time just when it's in use, because it's easy to get in and out of. Our primary source of electric power on Garuda is solar. We run with 3 primary solar panels at 640 watts that we can generate, which I have on the hard bimini, which we created. We actually dedicated more than one episode to it, but electric's very important to us, not just because we're, YouTubers, but are trying to keep computers charged, trying to keep cameras charged, just trying to kind of live our daily lives. But we have converted other systems on board to be primarily electric. So, for example, our toilet is an electric toilet. It's a push-button toilet. We replaced a manual vacuum pump toilet with it. Second is we have taken off the propane systems that were here on the boat. So our primary source of cooking is an induction cooktop, which is powered by electricity, as well as an electric oven. Of course, for backup and for some variety, we actually keep a little small portable propane barbecue grill right here on the rail as well. So that gives us some additional flexibility. And speaking of entertainment, we have probably the most noticeable item that is mounted on the boat, and that is our Starlink dishy. We've been running Starlink for about 6 months now. We have an episode that was dedicated totally to its install. Throughout Florida Keys, as well as here in the Bahamas, it has provided our main source of internet connectivity. So for me, that means weather and just general situational awareness from sailing. But it's also responsible for our general web browsing and, Wi-Fi calling and anything else that we would need for the internet. Just to be safe, though, we have a second system, which is a Wi-Fi range extender that is mounted on the starboard side of the cockpit, and it picks up local networks or marina networks when we are within range in order to support just normal Wi-Fi connectivity as well. So the other main feature here in the cockpit is our mizzen mast. So our mizzen mast holds the third of our 3 sails, which is our mizzen sail. And all of its controls are right here in the cockpit. We actually keep our gaff here as well, just for safety. But we handle both the main sheet for the mizzen, as well as the halyards, and our outhaul are all done from right here in this one position. I should probably also add that we use the mizzen boom as a primary lift as well. So it's what hauls our outboard out of the water and puts it on the rail. We can use the winches in order to move the dinghy. There's a lot of flexibility having a mizzen mast, not just from sailing, but just for everyday utility here in the cockpit of Garuda. So we have 2 self-tailing winches here in the cockpit as well. These control the main sheets, both starboard and port, for controlling the Genoa once we unfurl it, and once again that's done from right here in the cockpit. But the cockpit is also our living space. This is kind of our outdoor area. Maybe it's our back porch, depending on how you think about it. So we have included a table here, which we can have cocktails, dinner, anything else. It works whether we're under sail or we're just sitting here on anchor. But it certainly completes kind of this area as far as living spaces go. We have a really big cockpit. So this was one of the things we were most interested in looking for a sailboat, or it was on our short list of things, and that is that we had enough room to lay down here in the cockpit, or for one of us at least to be laying down in the cockpit while the other was at the helm or manning the boat. So we're really happy with the amount of space that's here. This seats a lot of people. I don't know how many people can fit in here, but this area seats a lot of people, but it was the lay down area that was kind of our requirement while we were here. We've had to clean up a little bit here. We've taken out some old equipment, done some other things. Probably the the simplest place to start is our forward controls. So I've moved this line out of the way, but we have a wireless wind instrument here that is mounted up on our main mast, and this tells us our wind speed as well as the wind direction when we're under sail. We also keep controls here for a remote control for our autopilot, but our autopilot control is actually at the rear of the cockpit, which is where usually I'm standing when we're manning the helm. Below the cockpit are a couple of additional components. We get kind of the rear end of the engine, but we've got a 50-gallon aluminum gas tank that was replaced back when the engine was installed or when the boat was repowered. And then after that is actually our steering quadrant. So our autopilot servos are down there. It's actually a gear driven, as well as there's a post that goes in right here at the floor that would allow us to steer in an emergency, and that post is actually kept in one of the Lazarettes that would allow me to control the rudder from up here should we have a failure of our primary steering system. There are two blowers on Garuda that circulate air down below. They both have clamshell vents back here in the back. And the last piece probably would be our davits. The davits are also something we've kind of toyed with since we've owned it. Put a couple of different brackets in place. Weren't really exactly certain how this was going to be used except as a storage for the dinghy. And we do store the dinghy on there occasionally. On long crossings or on a long cruise, we keep it up on deck because it's just simpler to manage. On short sails, we actually can tow it behind us as well. But it does provide us with another place to mount solar, as well as any antennas or other things that we would want to put on the boat. So it gives us some additional flexibility. Not exactly certain what we're going to stick with that. That might be something we change in the future, but frankly, right now everything is functional and, you know, we're running with it the way it is. The engine controls are also forward on Garuda. I kind of like this actually. It's right in my eyesight from the helm. They're lit as well. Well, everything except the tach. The tachometer is currently not working, but we can see everything right here on the panel as well. So this is the helm station on Garuda. This is where one stands in order to steer or otherwise control the boat, right here at the helm. It's pretty uncomplicated. The idea is just to give you as much clear vision as you possibly can have, so for, you know, your own situational awareness. But we also carry some electronics and things that help us when we're sailing along the way. The primary thing is a multifunction display. It's a Raymarine Axiom display. This actually came with the boat, and we did an entire episode on expanding this system. We've added a second one actually down in the nav station, so everything that can be done here can also be mirrored or done in the evening down below. But this is where I can kind of check on routes. My radar is reflected back here. It carries my ground speed, the depth, I mean, all indicators. This pretty much is the dashboard, if you want to say, here on Garuda. We back that up with our compass. So everything is double checked by compass course and paper charts, which we keep downstairs. Sometimes when sailing, some of that comes up here. And the last piece of equipment is an autopilot, which we keep down below. So as nice as that would be on the helm, that was kind of its original location, so we've cleaned it up. We've replaced the control unit there, but we're still running an original Raymarine autopilot, so we set course and alter course down below. And if you want more specifics about the Raymarine system or about our navionics, we did an entire episode on how we rewired that, converted everything, put in a new backbone. There's still some additional components coming on this, but you know, I think every boat owner would tell you their navionics is all just a work in progress just anyway. Below where we have this cushion, or where I sit at the helm, or Heather sits at the helm, this was originally the propane locker. So this has been completely redone. Now we keep all of our mess, but it is oils and chemicals and things for the engine on one side. The other side are all our cleaners for the deck and the exterior of the boat. We oftentimes keep our electric cords in here, or siphons, or other things. This pretty much is just a catch-all for equipment that's related to maintaining the boat. We have two very deep lazarettes on either side. So the first one here, I guess to show would be, although boy, this is going to be cluttered, is on the starboard side, and the starboard laz is full of all kinds of things. So I've wired these with lights, but when it's this full, it's kind of hard to see. Forward is our hot water heater. It's an electric hot water heater, although it's also plumbed to the engine. So after we've been running the engine for a while, it's heating water as well, and we get a nice hot shower once we've arrived someplace. We keep our spare boat equipment in here. So not only can we grab our life, because these are out, our life jackets are out when we're sailing, but we have a bag of dock lines. We then, our spinnaker and its turtle bag are kept in here, a bucket that includes all of the equipment for the dinghy, and then we have shelves and everything that extend behind us. So on this we have tools, we have extra chain, we've got extra anchors, we've got, you know, pretty much everything we would need to do, not for maintenance of the boat, but for use of the boat, either under sail or once we have arrived at anchor. On the other side, on the port side, we keep a few of our toys as well as our electric system. So it's equally as deep. We do have a manual bilge pump, a oil pump that's out here in the cockpit should everything else fail. And behind that we keep, actually I have my oil pump out equipment back there as well, but it's our fins and snorkel and just general gear for playing here in the water. We also have a floating tag line that we sometimes put off the back if we're just swimming or hanging out. And our electric outboard is kept in this locker as well. But the main purpose for this side is all of our electric controls. So all of this has been redone. None of this came with Garuda. Some of it is kind of a work in progress because I keep monitoring and testing different things. We have 4 12-volt, 100-amp-hour lithium-ion batteries from Battleborn. These are the golf cart style that were intended to be drop-ins into this tray. I've wired this a couple of different ways. It's kind of a work in progress, and I'm constantly monitoring it and studying it, but currently its primary source of recharge is the solar panels, which come off a Victron solar controller, which has a twin that has been installed here on board as well, solely for use on our flexible solar panel. There's a couple of breakers in place. I've got breakers between the panels and the charge controllers, and then of course between the charge controllers and anything that it would be charging. So it allows me to kind of continually fiddle with this, I guess. I'm testing a handful of different things. So for example, we have an AGM starter battery, and the AGM starter battery is recharged off the alternator. Toying with a battery isolation manager currently that allows me to monitor different voltage between the two units and distribute that alternator load between the house bank and the starter bank. So more on that in an episode to come, but we're also powered, since I've mentioned the alternator that's been replaced on the engine. We have a Balmar alternator, and we're running the 618 external regulator in order to be able to program it and monitor some of those charges, which helps me a whole lot in the study. And then of course we run the Victron inverter charger. So not only can the house bank be charged off of AC power, we can turn it into inverter mode and power all of our AC loads on the boat as well, which gives us some additional flexibility. I went with the Victron units for a couple of different reasons, but one of which is that it just has, they really are great talking to one another. That's really the primary reason. The thing that I've enjoyed the most is it's all app-based, and so I can monitor all of these things just on an app on my phone, and in fact I can control them as well. So that gives me additional flexibility when it comes to our electric system here on Garuda. And that probably concludes the exterior tour of Garuda. It gives you a little insight, at least, into what it's like to live in our outside space here on our floating tiny home. Hopefully that also gives you a little bit of detail into all the projects that we've had. But listen, we love receiving your comments, and so if there's questions you may have, or if you want to see additional detail about something, please make sure and list those in the comments below. In the meantime, I think we're probably just going to enjoy the evening, and we'll film the second part of this and show you the inside of our home tomorrow. Oh, and in the meantime, I'm wearing my Garuda gear, both my hat and my shirt, which we've been kind of field testing for a while now. So if you have an interest in any Garuda gear, please head over to the website. All the links are down below in our description. Also, we sure appreciate you tuning in, and so if you like seeing these types of things, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, and we will look forward to seeing you in the next one.
But I won't let the stormy seas throw me in open water. Let me have my peace and leave me till tomorrow. Wind into my sail, away from things I let go, floating on the waves. We go bottoms up, we go when you're feeling down. Push the pain away. We go bottoms up.